Good evening. Welcome to the November 18th Legislative Affairs Subcommittee meeting. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Roll call of the members of the Legislative Affairs Subcommittee. Councilor Novoselsky. Here. Councilor Powers is absent. Councilor Rizzo is absent. Councilor Zambudo.
Here.
Here. Councilor Guanasso.
Here.
Here. And Chairman Keefe.
Here.
Here. Quorum is present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So we're going to take up a few items today. I've reached out to Councilor Rotundo in regards to his first motion. I'm unable to figure out if he wants to continue moving it forward, but we did have some communications from the fellow council. I'm not sure if you'd like to read that into record. We'll take up item 19-230 first.
Sure. So this was a letter from Councilor Morabito. He was unable to attend tonight. It reads, Dear Chairman Keefe, I am unable to attend tonight's Legislative Affairs Subcommittee meeting. I ask that the City Clerk read my communication pertaining to this motion to the record. I question the reasoning for this motion. We do not currently have an issue in our city with voter fraud that was brought to my attention, nor does our local elections show a radical increase in voter turnout to cause suspicions of voter fraud. We should be encouraging voter participation as elected officials rather than taking actions to discourage and deprive many voters of their right to vote, reduce participation, and stand in direct opposition to the democratic process. This motion, if passed, does not only look into the feasibility, but will be a nod of approval by this legislative body that holds back and discourages voters who are disproportionately low income, racial and ethnic minorities, the elderly, and people with disabilities. Such voters more frequently have difficulty obtaining IDs because they cannot afford or cannot obtain the underlying documents that are a prerequisite to obtaining government-issued photo ID card. The voter identification laws are a part of a strategy to roll back decades of progress on voting rights. I ask that my colleagues protect the rights of the many people this will affect in our community, and please vote against this motion.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So on this motion, do any councils in the Legislative Subcommittee wish to speak on this?
Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in some sense, I tend to agree with Councilor Morabito, not 100%, but I don't think this is really necessary. I think it's a waste of time. It's the end of the year, and trying to get things done at this point would be just spinning our wheels. So I'm looking to vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. And Councilor Zambudo would like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I've heard a couple of extremes here. I hear the extreme of the motion coming in from the maker of the motion. I hear an extreme from my colleague that wrote his letter. I think that there's a middle ground here somewhere. I'm not in favor of just dismissing somebody's idea. I'd like to look into it. I'd like to give it. It's probably not going to be for this session, but I would still like to leave it in committee for out of respect for the colleague that put the motion in. I think, again, we're probably going to take something up like this next year, and that's all well and good. It's good to have debate, but I'd like to bring the tone down on both ends here so that we're reasonable about this. I don't think the motion was meant to be discriminatory, and I don't think it's as alarming as that letter I just heard from my colleague. So I just as soon see it left in committee or whatever. Maybe we take it up in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. And Councilor Guanasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, we're going to sign Dine on December 16th, so this would be a moot question to begin with. It would die there, and then would have to be resubmitted for the new year. My suggestion, I think also that Councilor Zambudo alluded to the fact that maybe we can redefine it, we can talk about it, but my opinion is I think we vote this down for this particular year, and Councilor Rotundo has been reelected, so he can resubmit on the next year, because we're not going to hear this in the within this session. So it's going to die anyway. So give him the option to, we would kill it and we go forward next year upon a resubmission of a motion. And maybe he can define it more rather than just saying an official voter ID, what the intent is and stuff like that. That's my suggestion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I tend to agree. I know, I wanted to hear from the committee first, really to decide on which direction we should head, but I know Councilor Zambito has one more point he'd like to make.
Yeah, no, under the circumstances, there's no way we're going to be able to debate this and talk about the pros and cons of a motion like this. So I agree with the council president that we probably should just let it go, kill it, and if Councilor Rotundo wants to resubmit it, and maybe he can resubmit it with a little more detail, would make it easier, and we'll go forward from there. So I'm going to acquiesce to whatever the body decides to do here tonight. I'm going to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. And if I can make some comments on this as well, I agree there probably are extremes to both. I tend to agree, not on every comment, but I tend to agree with Councilor Morabito on some of his empathy towards the voter and the legitimacy of the elections. I tend to believe they're sacred, especially in Revere, they do a very good job. We just saw this recently in an election, and I personally was able to witness people that were coming in, inactive voters that were coming in and having to show an identification, which I thought was prudent, and I thought it was the right thing to do. So if there was an inactive voter in the city that hasn't voted in many elections, they were needed to provide an identification to vote, which I thought was great work by the city of Revere in taking care of our faith in our local elections. But I will ask to put this to vote tonight, just because it needs to go somewhere, and if we just put it down, it's going to go to sign die at the end of the year anyway. So I'll ask to take the roll call on this. Madam Clerk?
Roll call on the motion. Councilor Novoselsky? No. Councilor Powers is absent. Councilor Rizzo is absent. Councilor Zambudo?
No.
No. Councilor Guanasso?
No.
No. And Chairman Keefe?
No.
No, this will receive an unfavorable recommendation for the full city council.
And we have two more items up. I'd like to take 19-242 first, because we have the chief of police here, and we want to take up this motion. Councilor Rotundo was also unable to be here tonight, but wanted to take up his motion, and then we would go to the last piece that regards some residential issues. So, Madam Clerk, would you read this motion?
Motion by Councilor Rotundo that the mayor request the state police and/or state auditor to investigate the policy and procedure regarding the release of information from the Revere Police Department, in particular the release of a domestic event involving my children on October 2nd, 2012, in which Officer Soto and Duca were involved. The information was released on September 16th, 2019, in an apparent attempt to discredit me publicly. I demand answer, and I demand an investigation from an outside agency. If this can be done to a public official involving my children, then it can be done to any member of the public.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before any councilors wish to speak, we have some communications from the police department specifically. Chief Guido?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. First of all, it's very upsetting that Councilor Rotundo would make a motion like this. The document that was released was one sentence. It's a public record, a log entry, and it didn't refer to any of the things that Councilor Rotundo brought that into the public light, not the police department. All it said is he went to his home and asked, I believe, maybe his wife to open the door. That was the whole, you have a copy of what was released. No one mentioned his children. No one gave out his personal information. And just for the council's edification, when someone comes to the police station and asks for a public record, we have no right to ask them their name, why they want the record. All we can do is determine if it's a public record, and if it's a public record, we have to release it. And that's what happened in this instance. I wish Councilor Rotundo was here. I did speak to him. I'm not sure who he thinks got the record. I watched the meeting before the election, and I, under the impression that the person that he had the altercation with here in the chamber, I think he believes that person got the record. I know for a fact that person did not get the record. And Councilor Rotundo also has some other motions, public records requests. We're still addressing them. One, he wants the video of the lobby, from the lobby. At first, it was my inclination to give it to him, but whatever we do for Councilor Rotundo, we'd have to do for other people in the public. And I have concerns. We don't want to intimidate victims or witnesses or other people who come to the police station for other business, so we're probably not going to release that public record, that video. And he'll be getting an answer from Captain Mangino. Captain Mangino handles all the public records requests. She's well-trained in it, well-versed, and she knows what's a public record and what's not a public record. So there's nothing going on in the police department. There's no clandestine operation to embarrass anyone. As chief, I would never allow that. And if Councilor Rotundo has information to the contrary, he should bring it to my attention and we'll have an investigation in the department. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Any councilors wishing to speak on this? Council Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I tend to agree with the chief. I know what he's going through. I don't believe that this particular item should be in front of the city council. This is a personal issue, not a city council issue. If anybody's been feeling that they've been harassed, by someone else, it's me. I've gone through a lot over the last year, 2 years, and someone should not throw stones in a glass house. So I am prepared to vote to recommend this to be denied. I will not vote for this motion. Thank you.
Councilor Zambudo.
So I'm totally uncomfortable with this whole situation because my colleague obviously feels aggrieved, but now hearing the chief, his side of the story makes it a whole different side, a whole different view from what the motion is. I think I wouldn't mind seeing this stay in committee so that we can discuss it further. I mean, with the chief here face to face with the council that made the motion, I'm not prepared to vote no on this motion. He still feels aggrieved. Let's get it straightened out so he understands that this didn't, in fact, happen. Somehow he feels it happened. I don't know what he has for, what he thinks is evidence that this happened, but I take the chief at his word. But I still feel uncomfortable voting the motion down, and I will not do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Guanasso?
Again, this falls under the guidelines of sign dying on December 16th, so we're not going to hear it again. So it's going to, if we just sit here and do nothing, it's going to just go by.
Are we not meeting again?
We're meeting, but I mean, we're not going to, we have already a set agenda for those dates. My opinion is this, I think every sitting councilor has a right to defend their position and certainly their family if anyone has been impugned. But I think the chief came up and stated very clearly the facts of the case. And we are, again, not a judgmental body. We're not a law officiating body. We don't adjudicate any particular processes. We just adjudicate. We just take on the issue as we see it. So obviously when a colleague has felt that he has a need to come forward, again, this type of thing can be resubmitted for detail, but I think that this deserves a lot of conversation, way too much more than what we have to time to that's been allow us for the next few weeks. So I don't particularly say vote against it. I just say if we just said it stays idle, it goes sign dying, and then Councilor Rotundo can certainly come back with it, and we can go over the details, go over many of the activities that he said occurred, and I think, but again, if the chief has given us the facts exactly the way it is, then that's sufficient. That's what it is. Anybody can come get a record. You don't have to give your name or address or who is getting the record. They stated what they gave him for a record and gave him the exact wording that was used. We don't, who's right, who's wrong. That's not, I don't think that's the position we should be in. That's only my limited position, but we'll let someone else adjudicate that. You hear that, Mr.
Thank
Chairman?
you. Good terms today. You must have read your dictionary. Councilor Zambudo.
I would request we leave this in committee, and if you want to meet again, then it's up to you. You're the chairman of this committee, but I would just ask that we leave it in committee.
Thank you. And I appreciate your request. And I want to state a few things. One is, Councilor Rotundo, fellow councilor, we're always here to, no one wants to be, attacked personally or feel attacked personally. So I truly believe that his intent on this motion was based on a motion of feeling that he was attacked. But I wanted to, just for clarity and for what we have here, his request was in regards to a September 16, 2019 records request. Officer Mangino, who's done a fantastic job communicating this, gave us exactly what was given out that night. It was a redacted one-line statement, which is public records. Unfortunately, some of these things are public records. So the public, and she gave a very eloquent definition of how public record requests can be attained in person or via email or some sort of written request, and she complied with that. Or I'm not saying she complied with that, but the department complied with that to the fullest extent and exactly the way they're supposed to. But again, I don't like seeing fellow councilors, any councilors, whether we love them or not, whether they're Ira or George or whoever it may be, to be attacked. But I feel like there may have been some misinformation. I don't think this necessarily needs to be drug out any further. If there are other further investigations that he would request or other information that he may request, I think he can request that in a separate motion. But to my understanding, this is pretty much resolved with Officer Mangino's comments that we all have in our packet tonight. So I would ask that we vote on this, and if we have to go back at another date and because again, it probably will die before the end of the year. If Council Rotundo has another request, I think that we'd be happy to take that up in another meeting. So motion to approve, or motion to, roll call, please.
Roll call on the motion. Counselor Novoselsky? No. Counselor Powers?
No.
No. Counselor Rizzo is absent. Counselor Zambudo?
No.
No. Counselor Guanasso?
No.
No. And Chairman Keefe?
No.
No, the motion will receive an unfavorable recommendation.
And Madam Clerk, the last piece is in regards to some communication. We had a very nice gentleman, Frank Ferrara, come to us last meeting in regards to some information that he's received from Rothman's Point. I could see we have some neighbors in the audience. What I would ask, while taking up this up in legislative affairs tonight, any of the speaking audience, we'd like to keep it to 3 minutes, and we'll have you speak, and then we'll actually have the council speak, and we want to give everyone a chance to talk, but we also want to make sure that we're having clarity and getting the information, the best information put forth. So I see Mr. Ferrara is up. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thanks for coming tonight. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Frank Ferrera. You saw our parcel numbers when you pay your bill, your parcel numbers. Excuse me. They're Mr. Chairman, you knew I came a couple of weeks ago, and you were going to tell me something that you had found out since then. So before I read the Riot Act, maybe I shouldn't.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sure. Well, that's great. I'd love if you could step aside. I'm going to read a communication, and then I'm also going to ask. We have Mr. Mara here from the City Hall that's going to help clarify this as well. And really, what I wanted to clarify in most layman's term is there's a wall. There's a wall that's maintained by the Army Corps of Engineers and through an agreement with the City of Revere and the state. This wall was built and it was expanded upon to protect everyone's property, yours and neighbors included. Part of the agreement to maintain this wall in this area was that there needed to be a right-of-way easement that would be maintained by the City of Revere. Over the years, the City of Revere did not do a very good job, and the residents did not do a very good job of maintaining that easement. They were building extensions onto the wall, they were building decks up to the wall, permanent structures, you name it. So the easement was not being maintained. When the Army Corps of Engineers and the State Department realized that, they came to us and said, hey, you're not keeping up to your end of the bargain. And what they started doing was fining residents, and then there was a threat to say, that's fine, if you want to take full ownership of this wall and maintenance of this wall, you can keep your structures up and you can not maintain your agreement, but when something breaks, you're going to be liable and you're going to be responsible, the city of Revere and the residents, which of course, well, which, like I said, in layman's terms, which of course we don't want to have happen. If something happens to that wall, if there's a break in that wall, if there are repairs needed in that wall, we do not want to foot that bill. You do not want to foot that bill. So,
You're aware that the wall between Short Beach and Rocky Beach isn't just big.
correct. And to help, and this.
Where we are on that Rosens Point, that was repaired in 97.
So just let me finish, and I want to have Mr. Morrow speak, and then we'll give you your opportunity as well. So in essence, the state and the city and everyone got together and said, all right, how can we make this right? And in the last few years, one of the reasons why neighbors were fined, and hopefully we can find a way to resolve those fines and levies, was because we are now actually doing our part in making sure that that right-of-way easement is maintained, asking people to move their property that is affixed to the wall, moving chairs back, et cetera. And I do understand that there's some unsightly signs that were placed on the wall. That's something that I think we can maybe work on, the way the signs look. What? Let me just finish. So in essence, the state is now satisfied, and in this letter, the government is now satisfied that we're actually doing our part in maintaining the easement, that they'll continue this agreement so that if at some point we need to fix that wall, they'll take care of it. And everyone's happy. But the clearest point is the state, the government, the city of Revere, nobody is taking steps to take anyone's property and take any, I think your word was, no one wants to take your property, and no one is here to claim your property or take any neighbor's property or any personal belongings on that property. And I just wanted to make sure you understood that. So before I let you speak, I want to have Mr. Mara come up and talk, and he can help clarify. And then if you have any questions, please do so. Mr. Mara?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's really nothing to add. I think you summarized it very accurately. When that project was done back in the 90s, the agreement among the Army Corps of Engineers, State DCR, and the City of Revere was that in order for the Army Corps of Engineers to maintain the property and to take responsibility for repairs to the wall in the event of storm-related damage, the city and the DCR entered into an agreement with the Army Corps to maintain the easement on the shore side of the wall. That agreement simply was never enforced. The city and DCR did, as you point out, it wasn't a poor job. They simply didn't do it. And so property owners down there who were subject to the easement were building on that property. And there was a time limit imposed on the city to start enforcing maintaining the easement, in other words, keeping it clear, which is really what the obligation is. Donnie Charmella and his department, working in conjunction with the Army Corps and DCR, then notified the residents of the importance of maintaining that easement, of clearing the easement. And not only would the city run the risk of assuming the responsibility for wall repair in the event of storm-related damage, but those property owners were threatened with either dramatic increases in the premium or the loss of their flood insurance. So what has gone on in these recent months that has Mr. Ferrara concerned is purely enforcement of maintaining it's purely the city living up to its obligation to keep the easement area clear of any types of obstructions. There was some allusion to the likelihood of eminent domain or something like that. That is absolutely, unequivocally not on anyone's agenda. This had nothing to do with anything like that. And I think if you asked anybody from the Corps, DCR, or the City of Revere, you would get an unabashed and unqualified, no, that is not on the agenda.
Very much.
Okay, I'm glad you do.
I want to hear from the DCR through a guidance document, transparency deal that just came out 2 months ago.
I'm sure if you contacted the DCR, they'll be happy to tell you that.
We can ask them. We can only ask them.
They'll be happy to tell you that.
Mr. Ferrara, I'm going to ask Counselor McKenna, who helps represent that area, speak on that behalf as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I met with Speaker DiLeo 2 weeks ago, and I asked him, I told him the situation, and I told him your concerns, and I did say that DCR went over the top and put signs up in parcel numbers on the wall, and I asked him if he could ask DCR to remove both from the abutting properties that have been inundated with this, and he said absolutely. So
Excellent.
you should see those signs and the parcel numbers that are on the wall spray painted over, so you won't be able to see them anymore.
That's reasonable.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Now, there's another thing I brought up last week. I don't know if I was clear enough on it. That 2 years ago, the Revere City Council filed accreditation package to correct an erroneous flood measurement. Now, I called the Whole Woods Group. I've got their phone number here for you all, and it says here, now, November of 2016, the floodplain map, revision accreditation package is passed by the Revere City Council to return the erroneous, and I use that word because Mr. Max Schultz of the Whole Woods Group, he's the engineer that you guys, not supposed to say you guys, you gentlemen and ladies are hired, the City Council hired the Whole Woods Group to do, 2 years ago, to do this engineering over at Rogan's Point and to correct the erroneous map floodplain, and there was a thing back then that was I brought it here, it's a rescinded, I put it in pink because it's a rescinded thing that is no longer, and in here it says you can use freeboard value, they call it, where you can go 2 feet if it doesn't give you what you want, if you're looking for something, if you're looking for a warmer temperature, or you can go 3 feet more. And if you want to read that, I've got copies for you. Now, the new one came out, says we have to tell people, and it's in, and I've got copies of the new law that came out. I gave you some last time, but I really, basically, this is it here, the executive order on promoting the rule through guidance documents. In other words, where did they come about putting up all these, and it's very expensive signs to do all that. Where did they come about? And I brought this again. This is a different one. In the letter that we got from the DCR, it says 50 feet on the wall. It says 25 feet to the ocean and 25 feet this way. There's my neighbor's house. There's my house. That was made in 1930. He mentions it in the letter. In 1930, these rooms were put on many years later. This would cut my house in half. I know you don't want eminent domain. You don't like that word, but I don't like it either. So I want to get to the executive order promoting that they can tell us what's up and how they came to it. It's called guidance document. Now, I can read the Riot Act here just to get an idea of where I'm coming from. And, I brought some signatures from these people, and that had to do with the signs, but it also had to do with that flood problem where it has not been rescinded, and the Woods Hole Group, which is the engineers that you are hiring, and they're like, I called the guy, I spoke to him, he used the word erroneous to say, yes, we're gonna correct the erroneous floodplain levels, and we have to do that. This was brought about 2 years ago. They brought it to FEMA. I've got the notes here. I'm going to give them to you. So that to me is more, maybe see something, say something, red flags. That's a nice piece of property. You see that blue right there? I'm sorry. That blue, that's gold. That's gold. So, and why are they putting our numbers on the thing? I know they're taking them off, but they can be selling our land to anyone in the world. You see how they can do shots like that, and they can bring it in or out. That's unreal. So you're telling me, domain, don't worry about it. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to call the OMB, because that's the Office of Management Budget. This is the protocol. They need to be advised to, it'll be in their lap. They'll have to decide to call the DCR, and I read the DCR website. They do great work. They have a place in the back of it that says they have not completed their interface with the GIS, which is Government Sharing Information. Do I have that right? GIS or GSI? Government Sharing Information. So they say that they're ready to receive the information. So a body like this could call the OMB, and I have all the numbers here for you.
Mr. Farrar, all right, I don't want to get off topic. Can I just comment on, can you put your mic off for 1 second? Let me comment on
Certainly.
it. Okay, a couple things. This city council will send a letter to our local delegation, the state and the DCR, requesting an official comment on the product. So we're going to vote on that tonight. We're going to ask for that. So okay, your letters are going way past me, okay, but I appreciate, okay, but we can't go off of everything that you say on every piece of paper tonight. So we're gonna respond to one of the requests. We're gonna send an official letter to the state delegation in regards to property being taken by eminent domain and to help give us guidance on that and/or an official statement. And number two is the FEMA piece that came up a few years ago. They rechanged the FEMA map, the flood zone map, from here to Florida. That was done by the government because of the flood insurance rates and setting the FEMA floodplain. We had no control over that except to accept that a few years ago, because at the end of the day, if we didn't accept it as a city, everyone's flood insurance policy would have been canceled in that area. But that would be a much different level of business. There really wouldn't be any city council business. But upon your request, we are going to send a letter to the state. We're going to send it to the DCR and our local delegation, which Senator Boncory's office, Representative Vincent's office, and Representative DeLeo's office have all been in contact with what we're going through tonight, and they are awaiting just some conversation to try and get some official response.
I did a little research. The OMB needs to be contacted. You need to call, and I'll leave you with this.
So you can
if you
give
could
that to-
contact them too, it would really
Right.
help, because that's the protocol.
I don't know what the OMB is, but I would be happy.
Office of Management Budget, they're the federal.
Okay.
But they tell the DCR, you have to put the guidance. You'll see it in the, I didn't make this up, this is the law.
Okay.
I found it, this is a new law, by the way.
Can I see the OMB letter, please?
Yes, and absolutely, and, thank you. And there's also, this is very important. This
This
tells you-
this is just the budget department. Okay.
Could you give me that again, because I'll tell you why. This is brand new. That's why maybe we're not aware of it. It came out on the 9th of October. That was put out very recently. And in there it says you have to contact the OMB before the DCR can put and they put it on their website. They put it on their interface on their website. Once, and they have much time. They have many months to do their homework. And that's the protocol. And instead of wasting time, I would appreciate everything you're doing.
What book is this from?
That's the law. It's from the 9th. It just came out. Oh, here's the number. That's page 2. That's part 2. And I brought part 1.
But what book is it? What book?
It's not a book. It's a law. It's a new law. This is a Google document. It's a law. It's a new law. It's called an executive order.
What book? Oh, wait, where is it from? Is it from an official law book?
That says part 2, right? I think part 1 has to do with business. Part 2 has to do with what we're talking about. And I have part 1 for you here.
All right.
In other words, here's the old one that they used back then. I put it in this color to show you that they're going by, that thing you're saying about in Florida and all that, that may be erroneous as well, because that's been rejected, that's been rescinded, that Florida thing you're talking about all around. It really is. And
All right.
no, here's the part 1.
Okay, Mr. Ferrer.
Yeah.
All right. Now we're going from one or two things into too many, right?
Well,
So,
I don't want to have to come
can you
back
hear
too
me
many
for-
times, but
I
OMB needs to
understand.
know.
So we will look into the OMB, which is just the budgeting office. okay?
Yes, but it's the protocol.
I understand.
They call DCR and say, put it on your website, and they give them X amount of months to do it.
Okay. To put what on their website?
How they got around to about Rogan's Point, specifically to Rogan's Point, what they're up to, even if it's just small stuff like we spoke of today, I'd like to know. If
All
it's
right.
bigger stuff, we'd like to know.
Gotcha. So I will add in the OMB.
Thank you.
I'm going to
Thank you,
review.
Mr.
I'm going to
Chairman.
review this document, and we're going to take up what you have here tonight. But any further actions or any further information you know, if you want to put it together in a little bit more clearly, and we can take other actions up later, at a later time. But we can't take up every piece of paper that you have in front of you, it's just too much.
All right, but these are legal documents.
Right, I understand, but if we just
I want
grab.
you to compare, the one you mentioned in Florida, may I give you this one at least? This is the one that they're not going by anymore because it's 2 years old.
Thank you.
And you
So
can,
we'll enter.
study it and come to your own conclusions, I'm
Right.
sure.
Understood.
I appreciate your
I
help.
appreciate your time, I mean, really, really appreciate it, and we're gonna draft up a letter.
Thank you, Mrs. McKenna,
That
for
include-
doing that work for us. Thank you. Beachmont needs your help.
All
Thank
right,
you very
so
much.
motion to approve? Motion to approve? So moved, approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferrara.
Appreciate you.
So that, well, actually, before I conclude that, did any other residents, I see some other residents from the neighborhood, did any other residents want to speak on that? Come on up.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Joyce Doherty. I live at 90 Broad Sound Avenue. I am right in between the DCR pumping station, and my backyard is the seawall. For years, I have had problems with the DCR, the Army Corps of Engineers. I have come to City Hall to have the City of Revere to protect my rights as a citizen. And I get that we live in a flood zone. I get that we need the seawall. I've been in many floods. I'm very thankful to all the people that have helped us during that time. However, this paper that they sent, I don't think that it's fair that they don't have any reasonable usage. For them to tell me that I can't put a lawn chair within 10 feet of the seawall, 5 feet of the seawall and 10 feet behind it, that's over 2,000 square feet of my property that I'm paying taxes on in the city of Revere that I can't put a lawn chair on there. There should be some clause in there that there should be some reasonable usage on that easement. The city of Revere is in partnership with the DCR and the Army Corps of Engineers. They have 1/3 of vocal input on this, and I don't feel that the citizens of Broad Sound Avenue are being protected for our lifestyle of living on the beach. I know that we do need the seawall, we do need the funding and all of that, but there could be a reasonable request to say, why can't they at least use this property in a normal way if it can be removed very quickly? They came into our homes, they did write on the seawall, Joanne, they did spray paint it off, and then they put it in red. So here they are walking through my property, touching my stuff, moving my stuff, spraying on the seawall that I can see outside my window, and it doesn't even look good. So I would ask the city of Revere and the council to please protect our rights to be able to live normally. Like, why can't I put a lounge chair on there for over 2,000 square feet of taxes that I'm paying on, right?
Correct. I tend to agree with you on the reasonable accommodations, and I would hope, and Mr. Mara, and I would hope that we would instruct that we would not be fining residents for having a lawn chair or something that's easily removed and not really in the way.
Did you see this letter of what they're saying that we can't have on there?
Correct.
Like, you can't even,
So there will be, we are going to look to see if we can work with them to frame this a little differently, because this has obviously gotten people up in arms. I think the body, meaning the city of Revere, is responsible for maintaining it. And as I mentioned, I would hope, and I can't instruct, but I would hope that we as a city council can request that no resident would be fined for having a lawn chair on that property or making reasonable accommodations. I'm not sure if Mr. Mara, you want to speak on that, but I would tend to agree. Now, have you been fined?
I have not been fined because I don't have anything on that property. But it would be nice, now that the seawall's 6 feet tall, we have we cannot get to our property. And I pay taxes way back on that beach. I can't use it because I can't even put a ladder over there. I can't put something that I can wheel back or anything like that. I mean, that's not even reasonable. And I don't really see the city of Revere really demanding any protection on my usage of the land. I mean, I keep hearing them, and I do understand that. But I've maintained that property. I maintain the pumping station's property. They don't take care of that property at all. It's falling apart,
So-
it looks horrible, there's trash all over it, yet the building department came down and fined me for having leaves in my backyard, but
Right.
they're not doing their
So,
part.
I'll ask Ms. McKenna to speak. Obviously, she does represent this area a little bit more closely, but what I would also recommend is, and this is a little bit new to me, this area, meaning I don't know what your backyard looks like, although it sounds beautiful, being on the ocean, is there probably needs to be, along with this letter, we need to get together with the local delegation, the DCR, and our federal representation in this area, in this part, and just get together on a, whether it's the ward councilor, the city councilor at large, the mayor's office, residents, and just try and figure out what's the best use for all of the residents, and maybe have some sort of a community forum that we can figure out how we can work together, because it doesn't sound like that's really happening right now. I'm just coming from afar. Sounds
No,
about that.
it doesn't.
There's a lot of confusion, so there's a lot of confusion. This needs to be talked about a little bit more, but we are gonna send this letter. Councilor McKenna has some comments, but I think that I would also recommend we have some form of a roundtable with all the stakeholders to get more of this information out,
That'd be
correct?
awesome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I totally agree with you. I mean, if you have the property and it's a lounge chair or it's a chair, I totally agree with you. But there are other offenders down there. There are offenders down there that are putting fences up, they're putting planters up, and that easement is being blocked. So if there was an emergency, just say there was an emergency, the apparatuses wouldn't be able to get by there at all, because I'm not saying you, but there are
Totally agree.
offenders that are putting fences up with locks on them, they're putting planters up, they've walled it off, so you can't really get by there. And I think those are the people that we're speaking of. We're not speaking about you just having a lounge chair on your property. I think that's, if we have to address the obstacles, we have to address all of them. And that's what I'm saying. And so I don't see why you can't put a lounge chair on there. But if you put a fence across with a lock on it, or you put planters or a wall there that you can't get by, you can't remove them, I think that's where it should be fined.
Yes, I totally agree.
Definitely.
And this did not change the situation. So-
Right, but I think we should advocate for you, definitely. You paid taxes on that, you've had that property for years and years and years, and I can't see, and they took that beautiful beach away, Rocky
Right.
Beach. So I think, I think we should advocate for you to have, removable things, but
Yeah,
not to have
it's
something
reasonable
that's
and
solid.
logical.
Right.
Yes, I agree
Okay.
with that. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate your
Thank you
time.
for your time.
Chairman.
Mr. Mara wanted to make one comment, but Councilor Guanasso.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly think that if she's paying taxes on a property that she cannot use, an abatement's in order. I think we can do that. We can make sure that the city of Revere goes down and makes a guesstimate as to how that tax rate should be abated. Because if you can't use the property, you're paying for it, then some sort of reasoning has to send forth. And so it's not the relief they're looking for, but at least it helps. And I think that removable items such as a lawn chair and stuff should qualify for anywhere we go. So, I mean, that's common sense, but at least I think we should do, Attorney Mara, is to
Yeah,
work
I
with
think-
them
I
and the
think-
assessor's office and get an abatement for them
I think we need to
immediately.
reel this back in, because to use nautical terms, this is like a fish that has gotten away, and we're letting it run. The obligation for anybody is that the easement area be free of encroachments. Encroachments are defined as trash, debris, unauthorized framing activity, structures, excavations, or other obstructions which inhibit the operation and maintenance of emergency operations, or that negatively impact the integrity of the levee. A lounge chair would never fit into that category. Anything that someone might use in the course of just enjoying a summer day would never fit into that activity. What had transpired there over the years were encroachments such as decks, staircases, ungated fences, locked fence gates, and other structures which were identified to prevent required access. So Again, sometimes things get either misconstrued or grow out of proportion. The easement is not a deprivation of the use of the property. It is exactly that. It is an easement with a very specific purpose, and the residents are required that and that the city is required to enforce that there be no encroachments on the easement area. So I hope that this allays some of the fears of putting a lounge chair and enjoying a summer afternoon is not considered to be an encroachment. Now, if you leave it there, or if you somehow permanently bolt it to the ground, that probably would be a problem. But it's mostly keeping the area clean for emergency access and maintenance operations.
Thank you, Mr. Mara. Thank you for the clarity. So just to clear everyone up, we are going to draft a letter from the city council to our state delegation just for an official response. If they choose not to respond, that'll be another, we'll communicate that as well. In regards to some of the neighborly concerns and the general, all the stuff that's going on, like Mr. Mara has mentioned, this seemed to get a little bit, grow as the time has gone on, is I would ask, and I'm sure Council McKenna will be more than amicable, to create a little bit of a neighborhood group to discuss what's going on, what's new, what's rumors, what's not, and what's going on, right? Outside of that, I think that's all of our affairs for tonight. Thank you for joining in, and we'll have our regular council meeting at 6 o'clock. Meeting adjourned.